What's up, y'all? It's Drewski, and I've teamed up with Mountain Dew to produce a hilarious new basketball podcast called The Dew Zone with Drewski. Learn the backstories of your favorite ballers and celebrities like Jamal Murray.
Did you have like a favorite team? Was it the Raptors at the time or no? Was the Raptors even started around that time?
Come on, bro.
I ain't that old, fam. You talking like I'm 50.
Taylor Rooks, Asia Wilson, and many more. You won't want to miss this. Listen to The Dew Zone with Drewski on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast.
He went what?
11th.
Cam
in the
Johnson
draft.
11th.
Yep. It's right on the screen right there.
Wow, bro. That's crazy. That's so love, bro. Because if y'all know Cam, you don't know how hard Cam worked. And, you know, it's a lot of people that doubt him. But, wow, that's crazy, bro. Wow, that's so crazy. I'm so happy for him right now. Y'all don't understand how happy I am for Cam because he proved it night in, night out that he deserves to be, you know, in the conversation for a lottery pick, man. He shot the ball like anyone I've never seen before in my life or played with. So wow, bro. I'm getting chills up here.
Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. It is the last week before free agency. My name is Mike Vigil, the host of this podcast. And of course, joining me is Sam Cooper. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Mike. I've calmed down since the draft. I'm ready to go.
You're not angry anymore.
No, I think the Suns, I've always said this, I think the Suns improved with their moves during the draft. I thought they could have done better, but, got to take what you're given. And just analyze it to the best of your ability, and we're going to do that with these free agents today.
It's optimism season. It's optimism season for Suns fans, for NBA fans, for me. This is always the week of the year that I think that I'm the most optimistic. Cam Johnson becomes Klay Thompson in my mind. Ty Jerome is essentially, somewhere between Steve Nash and Steph Curry, somewhere between those two.
Yeah, I mean, if you look in the YouTube comments section of the video we just posted on Ty Jerome, the American Steve Nash, I was almost surprised you didn't throw it in the thumbnail itself to get 50,000 views.
I wouldn't dare. I don't think it's that hot of a take to say that he's maybe potentially the best passer on the team right away because of how bad this team is at passing. I do give credit for Devin Booker improving his passing, and of course we had that sort of streak in the middle of the year where Mikal Bridges just became an excellent Nicholas Batum essentially for a few weeks, and I don't know if that'll continue, but the Suns are one of the worst passing teams in the NBA, so it's nice to add some guys that are actually good at that. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about right now, we just released a video on YouTube about Ty Jerome saying, is he the best passer on the Phoenix Suns? It's not really the purpose of the video. It's just that YouTube, you kind of need a title like that to get people to watch it. But what I will say is it's a breakdown of what makes Ty Jerome good at passing and what it takes to be a good passer in general. And I thought Ty Jerome was a good player to actually talk about that. We'll see if he's good, but we should actually talk about that. It's been a few days. Well, it's been about a week since the draft happened. It was a dramatic draft. Like I said at the time, very confusing to follow. So many players wearing the wrong hats for teams that they're not actually going to play for. But, it shook out. We know what the Suns are doing now. We've had more of a chance to watch film of these guys, watch interviews of them talking. How do you feel? Let's break down each one. Let's start with Cameron Johnson. Still a reach, right?
Yeah, yeah. Still a reach.
But how do you feel about him now, just sort of understanding his place on the Suns and a little more about him and his play style?
Well, okay, look, so because these guys were traded and some of these trades don't officially go into effect for a little while longer, we haven't seen any press conferences. So I think with Cam Johnson, that's still the big question is how does he fit on the Suns? You guys are going to hear us talk about a lot of free agents today. And if we pick up some of these free agents, Cam Johnson's going to be a third stringer. So 11th overall pick, third string rookie, especially when he's 23 years old and is a little bit more NBA ready. That's maybe the biggest question But his skill set speaks for itself. You know, the injury concerns are there, but he's going to shoot the lights out. And again, that was the big strategy for the Suns on draft night. They dramatically improved their shooting across the board at 4 different positions.
I think they focused on shooting and also brains. They wanted to get smart guys who play winning style basketball, regardless of upside consideration. Now, not to say that these guys don't have a super, super high upside. Who knows? Cameron Johnson could really improve in the NBA and could become somewhat of a serviceable defender. I wouldn't expect him to be like an excellent defender, but I think he could become a serviceable defender. And a 6'9" guy who could shoot 45% from 3 being a serviceable defender in the NBA becomes a very valuable player. It's just there's no real superstar or all-star upside to him unless that shooting is just absolutely insane. And I think Ty Jerome is a similar guy where maybe he doesn't have a super high upside, but what he does do is play really smart basketball and he shoots really well. Not a lot of turnovers for either of these guys. I mean, I'm not sure Cameron Johnson can dribble. I'm not sure he even needs to dribble in the NBA with that skill set. He can get the shot off 6'9", and he shoots in like half a second. If he can get the shot off that quickly, who needs to dribble? We've seen Klay Thompson score 40 points with taking like 3 dribbles. So that's something that you can expect out of Cameron Johnson. But Ty Jerome is another smart guy. He can do a lot of things. He's probably not a star. Definitely not a star. Let's say that. But a serviceable NBA player on a team that doesn't have a lot of those. And it's almost guaranteed that he's going to be like, okay. He's probably not going to be a bad NBA player overall. Well, that's how I feel at least. What do you think about Ty Jerome?
I think I agree with you. He's not going to be an awful NBA player. We just have to see if he can finish at the NBA level. Here's the thing about Ty Jerome. When we were reacting to the draft, we were reacting instantly. And before the Suns had made a couple of moves, at the time that we were recording, it was during the second round. And then the Suns instantly made a couple of moves after the second round. I know this isn't about Ty Jerome specifically, but it comes into play because the Suns added 2 more prospects. They signed undrafted rookie Jalen Lecque to a 4-year deal with 2 years guaranteed. And they also brought in yet another point guard prospect, Jared Harper, to play with their Summer League team. So at least going into Summer League, the Suns are going to have 5 point guard prospects in Elie Okobo, DeAnthony Melton, Lecque, Harper, and Ty Jerome. And what I think is interesting about that situation specifically, you said that you thought the Suns were drafting for brains. But when it comes to the point guard position, these are 5 ridiculously different prospects with ridiculously different skill sets. It almost feels like James Jones and company are throwing darts at a wall and just they're seeing what's going to stick. Like these are 5 guys with 5 different skill sets that we can break down. And just hopefully one of them is going to become an NBA rotation player.
Yeah, speaking of optimism season, we've been calling, Suns fans have been calling Jalen Lecque Baby Westbrook on the internet. This is an undrafted point guard, young, actually the youngest player drafted. I think it's interesting because when we were talking about the draft initially as well, we talked about how Cameron Johnson is one of the I think he was the oldest guy drafted, and Ty Jerome was 21, not a young draft pick as well. These guys are older. I mean, they're basically on each side of Devin Booker's age, just a little bit older and a little bit younger. And Devin Booker's going into his 5th season. And we talked about how it seemed like James Jones was trying to draft someone that they didn't have to spend a ton of time developing. They already felt like they were a more complete player and could contribute right away. And then he signed Jalen Lecque to 4 years. This is a 4-year deal for Jalen Lecque. And Jalen Lecque is a long-term prospect. This is the type of prospect where you can actually take time to develop. And I actually think this overall is an interesting strategy. What they did is they used the top picks to pick a guy that could contribute immediately, which is nice because those are difficult to get late. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. You just don't know. Those are the type of guys that go at the end of the first round, which is where Cameron Johnson was slotted to go and where Ty Jerome did go. So it's kind of interesting to use the top picks there and then say, well, we still want to take a risk here. We still want to find a guy that could potentially outperform where they're picked. And I think that's what they did with Jalen Lecque. They looked at him and said, this is a guy that could be he's insanely athletic. If you haven't looked at this guy's highlights on YouTube, find a mixtape because some of the stuff he does is completely insane. He's a small kid, but he can jump over you and slam on you with no problem. And to do that as a point guard is very impressive. And so they looked at him and said, he's insanely athletic. He's very raw let's take him late, but then they signed him to a 4-year deal. To me, that shows a commitment to attempting to develop a guy without the pressures that come with like Dragan Bender being selected 4th or Marquise Chris being selected 8th. There's a lot less pressure when you're undrafted entirely and you have 4 years to potentially develop into an NBA player. I think it's a really interesting strategy, and I'm excited to see Jalen Lecque perform at Summer League and see what he's like against NBA competition.
He's gonna get his ass kicked. He's gonna get he's gonna get destroyed. It's not even that he's super small. He's 6'4" with shoes. He's got a 6'9" wingspan. And so, just so other people know exactly what we're talking about with this athleticism, he had the highest max vert of anyone who participated in the NBA draft combine last month, 43 inches for a point guard. That's absurd. But he was a high school player. He rejected this offer to go to NC State and play in college, and he was NBA draft eligible. So I don't know, similar to another prospect like Darius Bazley, guys who are going straight from high school to the NBA, especially in this era where everyone else has played at least a year of disciplined college ball. He's going to get his ass kicked. He needs to spend at least 1 year in the G League, quite possibly more, and we'll see what we have with him then. But again, it's just sort of opposite of what we did with Ty Jerome. Long-term project. Not necessarily the IQ, broken ass jumper, completely broken jumper, but a great finisher, a guy who looks like he can make good reads out in transition and some good NBA level passes. So who knows? Maybe we have something there.
Yeah, and if we don't, we didn't waste anything on him. That's the nice thing about taking a guy like this really late. It's just that you don't use a draft pick on him. You get him for cheap. He uses a roster spot. Now that is partially what happened here. You need to carry 12 men without getting fined for the Suns. So he was a 12th guy signed, and he's on the roster technically. It's not a two-way deal from what I can tell. There's always more information that comes out about all of this later. But he's taking up a roster spot for now, and that's going to be a real interesting player to see develop over time, and we have time to see it happen. It's also a guy that could be used in trades later. Of course, this is kind of how it works. You take prospects like that, and if you have to throw him in, you can. And of course, if we trade him, he'll become an excellent player and probably fix his jump shot at some point.
Well, that's what I'm waiting for with Anthony Melton, is the inevitable trade, and then he becomes a 40% three-point shooter. Quickly on Jared Harper. Do you want to mention Jared Harper? Is it even worth it?
Yeah, no, let's talk about him.
I mean,
Summer League's coming up. People are going to be there.
Yeah, it's just we've got so many point guards potentially on this roster. If Melton and Okobo play, how are they going to get all these guys time? Jared Harper played for Auburn, so obviously he was pretty deep into the tournament. Tyler Ulis sized at 5'11" with shoes, but not Tyler Ulis length, with a 6'5.5" wingspan. And generally, this is a guy who couldn't really finish plays even on the college level, had really poor finishing numbers and 2-point percentages throughout his time in Auburn, but just did everything pretty solid. Was a good 3-point shooter. And again, similar to Lecque, great athleticism. He had a 40.5-inch max vert, which ranked to the 86th percentile of guys at the combine. His lane agility time of 10.7 seconds was in the 73rd percentile. As I mentioned, he's not tall, but he has a plus wingspan, so there's athleticism, good measurables there as well. My favorite fun fact about Jared Harper, I don't really understand why they do the bench press at the combine, like what it's supposed to demonstrate, but I like that they do it because it's 185 pounds. Jared Harper, a guy who is 165 pounds, did more reps of the bench press than Pelican center Jackson Hayes at the draft combine.
Wow.
So that's like deceptive strength right there from him. But again, this is just a summer league deal. As far as I know, this is not like an official deal with the Suns to extend beyond that. So we'll see if they have a gem in his summer league play, but otherwise kind of hard to see them holding on to him long term.
Yeah, I doubt it. It's just, you talked about it. There's too many point guards on this roster as is. And there's not a lot of minutes to go around. And we're probably going to talk about multiple point guards later on in this podcast when you and I break down our top five potential free agents for the Phoenix Suns, which was actually really hard for me to come up with. Now, there were a couple other players added to the roster, Dario Saric and Aaron Baines. Do you have any thoughts on either of those guys now that we're a week later?
Nothing has changed, I don't think, in my opinion.
Yeah. So sometimes I wonder, so the interesting thing about the Suns right now, and we didn't talk too much about this, there's only one power forward on the roster right now that can really play power forward, and that's Dario Saric. And I think what is interesting about Aaron Baines and Dario Saric joining this team, we're assuming Aaron Baines is going to stay on the team. Dario Saric is, of course, staying on the team. That's what we used that number 6 pick for. It really clarified, I think, what we're going to have to look at in free agency. And sometimes I wonder if Dario Saric could have been brought on to play that backup power forward position. Is it guaranteed that he was brought on to start? Or is Dario Saric more of a backup power forward in general? Like I said, I didn't watch him a ton in Minnesota. I was a big fan in Philadelphia, and I was a fan of his potential. It's just, sometimes I wonder if we're reading too much into that as a starting power forward right now. I mean, he's the only one on the roster, so I don't blame us for doing that, but I wonder.
Totally. I'm glad you brought that up, because something that I shouldn't even say it worried me, but something that made me think this week was Dario came out with these comments about how basically how happy he was to be playing in Phoenix, and was kind of saying, I don't have the exact quote on hand, but was kind of throwing shade at Minnesota, saying he didn't feel that he was being used right there. I agree with what you just brought up completely. I don't think it's a guarantee that Dario is, especially in a team that, as currently constructed, is so bad defensively. It shouldn't be a given that he's going to be a starting caliber player. It's great that he can shoot. It's great that he's got a little bit of creation. It's great that he's a young player who potentially could be a long-term asset for us and continue to get a little bit better. But no, there are still starting caliber power forwards out there that are better than Dario Saric that I'm very interested in looking at with the money we have for free agency. It shouldn't be a given that he's given that spot. And so if that's really the way he feels, you may be risk alienating him a little bit, but this is the last year of his contract anyway.
Well, he did mention that he's a fan of Monty Williams, though, and I think that's nice. If you have a coach you've worked with before, someone that you're familiar with, if you have to come off the bench, if it's something that makes sense with his situation, then it's easier when you have a coach that you already get along with. What's going to be a hard sell is selling it to him in his contract year, because he's going to be a free agent after this year. He deserves minutes because he's a good player. But when you're in your contract year, you want those starter minutes. You want to play as much as possible to try and boost the amount you're going to get paid. The good news for Dario is the 2020 free agency class is kind of grim. So I think he'll do okay if there's teams with cap space. I assume the Knicks will have at least 40 million space next year. So
Once
they'll do okay
on all their free agents
Once they
this
strike
year.
out.
Yes.
Exactly.
And sign Serge
Exactly.
Ibaka to a $40 million contract next year with all that money. God, if in case you guys don't know, the 2020 free agency class is garbage, which is kind of why it's important for the Suns to, maximize the assets they have right now. Because
the Suns and everyone else.
If you miss out on the point guard you want this time around, the best point guard next summer is Kyle Lowry. If you can't get Kyle Lowry, I think it's Fred VanVleet.
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not great. And it's not to say that Fred VanVleet is not a good player. Of course, he's a good player. We just saw how he did in the finals.
He shot 90% in the finals.
Two more things on all that transpired last week. How dare you, everyone who turned on Richaun Holmes?
Oh, wow. You're going to bring it up.
I just got to say that. It's not. Here's the thing. Aaron Baines is fine. Aaron Baines is potentially good. But Richaun Holmes was good. Richaun Holmes was insanely effective as a pick and roll player. One of the most efficient players. I think he may have been the most efficient player on our team. Yes, all he does is catch lobs, but he also finishes through contact, and he actually did take a few dribbles and create for himself a little bit. And he improved at all of those things as the season went on. He was also a much improved defender from the previous year and a young player at 25 years old, a player that could potentially improve. Remember, defense takes the longest to be good at, especially in the position that he plays. It takes time to be a great defender. Yeah, he's probably not as good of a defender as Baines is right now, but 2 years from now, are we sure that Baines is going to be a better defender than Richaun Holmes? And is it worth it to lock a guy down with such a small cap hold on the Suns? You can sign him over the cap relatively easily and keep him for a long period of time. I'm excited about Baines. I don't want this to sound like I am trashing Baines here, but I think it's possible to say that Baines is going to be good on the Suns and probably a good defender and potentially a good three-point shooter, good in the backup role, without saying that he is definitively better than Richaun Holmes. I think at the very least, going forward, it's debatable at the least.
Yeah.
You had a lot to say about that on Twitter. I don't know if you want to comment about it here.
I mean, you echoed my sentiments. I wasn't defensive with anything that I said on Twitter. I'm just pretty confident in the opinion that, look, with Aaron Baines, he's 32 years old. My worry is that the Suns are a 25 to 30 win team next year. Halfway through the season, Aaron Baines is either bought out or traded for a protected second round pick to a contending team that he actually wants to play for. and we gave up a 25-year-old center who just had a breakout season. I mean, that's really all it is.
Yeah.
Is if Richaun Holmes was interested in staying in Phoenix, and we have no confirmation that he was, I was just really impressed with his play last year. I mean, he had a 66% true shooting on a team with no point guards. DeAndre Ayton does that, and we're falling over ourselves to compliment how polished his offensive game is.
Yeah.
So, I think Holmes deserves some credit, and I'm worried about Baines' ability to finish plays off offensively. We'll see how that mentoring comes out. On the defensive side of things, I do think he can potentially be a good mentor on the defensive side of the ball for DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah.
But that's really all I have to say about it.
I mean, if we buy him out, at least we'll have extra cap space in that sweet 2020 free agency class.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to say about last week is just to recap how much of a disaster it was to not trade TJ Warren and Josh Jackson before the trade deadline last season, because I think that it was very difficult to get rid of TJ Warren. Now, everyone values cap space so much when the season ends, especially when half the league is a free agent this summer. So it's very difficult we had to attach an asset to TJ Warren. Would it have been easier to convince a team that maybe was competing for the playoffs to give up a pick and maybe an expiring contract for TJ Warren, and then he could have potentially played on the team, assuming he was actually healthy, which is a lot of people think he could have played at the end of the year and he was held out, or he held himself out possibly. And the other part is Josh Jackson. It's impossible to trade Josh Jackson at this point because every team values their cap space at this point. It's not to say that it's guaranteed that he would be traded before the trade deadline. It just seems like it would have been a smarter time to do it at that point. Mind you, he doesn't start playing very well until after that, so it probably would have been more difficult for that reason. But teams, I think, would have been more, they would have liked a chance to decide whether or not they want to pick up Josh Jackson's option by seeing him on a team that wasn't the Phoenix Suns. They don't really have a chance to do that now because they have to just decide basically before the end of October.
Yeah, it's tough. I guess you could just say that some management styles are more liberal and some are more conservative, and the Suns, at least as far as we've seen them for the past year or so, have been more conservative. Sometimes you take that stance and you wait it out with a prospect and you refuse to give up on them after a couple of years, and it really does work out. And they turn things around, and who knows, maybe Josh Jackson, if the Suns keep him around, could even bounce back and have a great year. It does feel like his stock is at an all-time low. But in this case, it seems like the Suns maybe didn't play their cards right, waited a little bit too long, and how it's going to be tough. We should talk about the maneuvers that the Suns have, the different cards that they could potentially play to increase their cap space, because I definitely want the Suns to have more cap space on June 30th than they have right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a free agency podcast after all. This is our free agency preview special, so we should talk about that. So the best way to enter into this conversation is to talk about the cap. Now, we're not going to go super deep into the cap here. I think a lot of Suns fans already have a general understanding of it, partially because everyone's been talking about it for 3 months now. If you listen to this podcast, Sam and I have been talking about it since basically the end of the season. So you have a few months of us talking about it at this point. But we do want to break down some of the machinations, some of the maneuvering the Suns can do. Actually, Sam, why don't you start? You seem to have a better grip on it than I do.
Okay, so first of all, we're not going to go super in depth here. Let's be honest, Mike. We share a lot of listeners with 7 seconds or less. I'm pretty confident in that.
Yeah.
So they just released a great episode. David Nash, Max McCauley, they, on their Nerdcast, as they call it, really explain some of the underlying rules behind it. So if you haven't listened to that already, feel free to go listen to it for some more in-depth explanations. We're really just going to give you the numbers here. So we know that the Suns are going into the summer with about $13.5 million in cap space. There's some varying figures on that. I know David Nash from 7 seconds or less has it at 13.2. I know Keith Smith has it at 14.1. I'm unsure whether or not he's including newly signed Jalen LeCue into that. But the Suns have about $13.5 million in cap space, and that puts them at 13th on a list of the teams with the top amount of cap space going into this summer. So they are certainly going to be a player. They're a team with a good amount of cap space. They are going to function as an under the cap team because it makes much more sense to do so than going into the summer over the cap, in which case you would only have your mid-level exception. But there are quite a few teams ahead of them. Do you want me to read them out, Mike? I don't know.
Let's hear it. I'm interested.
Okay. All right. So we've got number one. So the team with the absolute most cap space are the New York Knicks, $70.5 million. is what they can create to sign some interesting players.
Yeah.
As a report just came out today.
The Morris twins. It's perfect. It's just so perfect. They have to go there. I can't imagine a better fit between team, fan base, and players than the New York Knicks and both of the Morris twins playing in New York. It's really just perfect. I mean, you live there, Sam. What do you think?
I only live there for a few more days. I think it is perfect. I don't think Knicks fans deserve this. I don't think Knicks fans deserve this,
No,
man.
they don't.
Frank
I feel for
and
them.
Kevin Knox. It's just so hard to get excited about anything behind that court except for Mitchell Robinson. They really don't deserve that. But can you honestly blame a free agent who would want to go to Brooklyn over New York?
The idea that they could sign the Morris twins and DeMarcus Cousins is, you can't even make that. It sounds like fiction. Like, it sounds like we literally just made that up just now. They could potentially sign both Morris twins and DeMarcus Cousins on the same team. I want to see that. I really want. I want a reality show about that.
Is that all of Team Foe? I don't even remember anymore. Do you remember that thing? It was the family over everything, and it was the Morris twins. Was Cousins involved in that?
No, I don't think he was. They had a.
Oh, it was Thomas Robinson
Yes,
was in there, right?
that's who it was.
To
Yes.
bring him back.
Yeah, might as well. Doesn't he already? He might already play there for all I know.
I don't even know. All right. We're getting off track a little bit. But so the Knicks have more cap space than anyone else. But after them, you've got Sacramento, Clippers, Brooklyn, Indiana, Boston, New Orleans, Dallas, the Lakers, and Chicago. And that's the top 10. All 10 of those teams are projected to have above $20 million in cap space. Mm-hmm. And $20 million in cap space is kind of what Phoenix can realistically create, like the max amount that we can create without going into options such as waiving and stretching Tyler Johnson's contract, the final year of his deal, or renouncing the rights to Kelly Oubre.
Right.
So even if the Suns kind of make those minor maneuvers to get them a little bit more money to go after a little bit of a bigger fish, we have to talk about, are these other 10 teams, how competitive are they going to be for some of the same free agents that maybe we want? And in addition to that, we have to talk about, if you want to get off Josh Jackson and, just Josh Jackson's contract in the first place and not have to potentially waive and stretch him as well, those are the teams you're calling.
Right.
Are any of these teams willing to take a flyer on Josh Jackson? Sacramento has $63 million in cap space. Are they really convinced that they're going to get two max quality players to come there, or are they maybe willing to take a gamble on Josh Jackson?
I have to say, I kind of want to see him on the Knicks now.
But the Knicks they want, I don't even know exactly who they want. Look, plan A is Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Kyrie, he's not going to go there.
No.
Plan B is going to be Kemba.
Right.
Plan C is going to be Tobias Harris. Plan F is going to be the Morris twins. There's a whole list of guys who are going to be up there before they even consider. And it goes back to exactly what you were talking about. It's so much easier to convince teams before free agency to take players and absorb them into space. But on June 30th, everyone thinks they're the prettiest girl in school.
Yeah, I have heard that the Knicks are thinking about just punting on this year's free agency and trying to retain cap space for next year. And Josh Jackson is actually a good option for that. He eats up a roster spot. He's a young potential player who could actually perform well, and maybe they keep him on their roster next year. But you can also decline that year and open up more cap space next year. So I actually think the Knicks aren't completely out of the question there. And as we've seen, based on those rumors, they're not afraid of guys who have had attitude problems, we'll say, like Josh Jackson. So it's just very hard. Josh Jackson, of course, tanks his entire trade value in the time that we want him to be moved. I find it hard to believe that he would even want to be here, to be honest, at this point, because I think if anything has happened this season, or this offseason, I should say, we've made it very clear that we're trying to move Josh Jackson. That's like an absolute guarantee here. So I could see him actually wanting to leave too. So, like you said, there's a few ways to create some cap space. D'Angelo Russell is, of course, the player that we talk about. His contract starts at about, his max deal starts at about 27-ish, 28-ish million. You can
27.
get there potentially. If you renounce Oubre alone, you get to about 22.8 million. If you renounce Oubre and get rid of Josh Jackson somehow, you could create enough space to offer D'Lo his max. And then you don't really have a lot of space to move around after that. You potentially would have to use what's called a room mid-level or some sort of over-the-cap deals to get a player after that if you want to try and fill another power forward spot here because we only have one, like we talked about earlier. So it's difficult, and the machinations are difficult in this, but there's a lot of ways to do it. Something about Kelly Oubre to remember. With Kelly Oubre, we do own his matching rights. We also own his bird rights. So a couple, just to define that for people who don't understand that, the matching rights are simple. Restricted free agents are allowed to go out onto the market and get an offer from a team. And then, of course, the team that owns their rights are allowed to match that and keep it. They have 3 days after they're given an offer. The other thing is the bird rights. The bird rights allow us to go over the cap to sign him after his cap hold. His cap hold is about $9 million. So we're able to go over the cap, anything over $9 million that Kelly Oubre gets paid. Hopefully not a lot over $9 million, but we talked about all the teams that have cap space. You could see these guys offering something for him pretty easily. So I can't imagine he's going to get anything close to his cap hold. It's probably going to be $15 million. I'm going to say that as the least potentially for Kelly Oubre, but we don't really know, so we'll see. Any other thoughts on the cap?
No, that's about, well, I guess the one other thing I'll say is that, it's good that you brought up the room mid-level. So the Suns can create, I mean, look, if the Suns do a bunch of things, I think most Suns fans listening probably want to keep Kelly Oubre, right? So a realistic best case scenario for the amount of cap space you can create, if you've got about 13.5 right now, waiving and stretching Tyler Johnson saves you about 12. Maybe in the best case scenario, you get someone to actually take Josh Jackson and attach either DeAnthony Melton or Elie Okobo. That saves you another 8. What are we looking at with a quick math there? That's like $33 million if you really want to create that much. But so the Suns can create that much money. They can spend it all on one player and still have the money to go over the cap, re-sign Kelly Oubre, as you said, to use the room mid-level exception, which is for teams that opt to go into free agency under the cap. And that is worth $4.8 million. So that is worthwhile money. It's not pennies. It's not a veteran minimum type contract. You can get a decent role player with that money. They also have the biannual exception available to them, which is specifically designed for teams that are over the cap but under the luxury tax apron, and is worth $3.6 million. And the only other rule there is that you can only use it once every 2 years.
Right.
So for instance, all the teams under the cap, all the teams in the luxury tax, and also the Bucks, Pelicans, Knicks, and Spurs specifically do not have that option available to them, those 4 teams, because they used theirs last year and you only use it once every 2 years.
Right.
But that's an additional $3.6 million. So that's a way for the Suns to fill out their bench with potentially 2 okay role players once all this stuff kind of clears out, even after they go after their main targets and also try to re-sign Oubre.
Yeah, maybe the Morris twins would be a good fit.
I think the Morris twins are probably looking for a little bit more than that.
Maybe if we combine the contracts and then offer it to them as one big contract.
Dude, can you just imagine them mentoring like Kevin Knox and Frank Ntilikina?
Weirdly, if they didn't have attitude problems, either one of them would be a good fit at power forward for this team. But just the basketball side of it, unfortunately, the Suns can't afford to have any guys with attitude problems at this point. Another reason why Josh Jackson is likely gone. Another thing to remember is in the past, Robert Sarver has gone above the cap. He's never gone into the luxury tax, from my knowledge. So it's not to say that he's unwilling to go above the cap. I think he would be willing to go above the cap. We don't know this for sure, obviously. No sources here. And of course, if you ask him, he'd probably say, yeah, of course I'm willing. But who knows if that's actually true. He has done it before, so there is evidence that he'd be willing to go above. There is, if you go a certain amount above the cap, that's where you get the luxury tax. That's where it costs a lot more, and that money doesn't go to players. It goes to the rest of the teams in the NBA. I can't imagine he'd be willing to do that on a team that won 19 games. Maybe if we're a little closer to winning a championship and the team is a little more profitable, I could see that happening. But we will operate under the assumption, at least I will, that it's possible to go above the cap here when we break down our players that we're thinking about in free agency. Any other thoughts, Sam?
Nope, that for sure. We're assuming that. We're going to go over the cap.
That's the cap. That's the cap. We understand it. We're pros. We're experts. We're basically Nate Duncan and Danny LaRue.
Not at all. Not even close. No. We learn new things every day.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to break down our top 5 free agents for the Phoenix Suns, including, of course, some honorary mentions. We'll be right back. All right, guys, we've got an announcement to make. Blue Wire is teaming up with Harry's to make sure our listeners are shaving comfortably. Go to harrys.com/bluewire to save $10 on a value trial set, which includes a 5-blade razor with lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel, and a travel blade cover. You get all of that for just $3 shipped right to your door. Enough with the cheap razors, it's totally worth trying Harry's. Harry's has fixed shaving by combining a simple, clean design with quality and durable blades at a fair price. Harry's founders were tired of paying for razors that were overpriced and over-designed. Harry's bought a world-class blade factory in Germany that's been making quality blades for over 95 years. Join the 10 million who've tried Harry's. Claim your trial offer by going to harrys.com/bluewire. All of Harry's blades come with a 100% quality guarantee. If you don't love your shave, let them know and they'll give you a full refund. Again, make sure you go to harrys.com/bluewire to redeem your razor for $3. Guys are terrible at taking care of their health. Whether it's a knee injury, bad back, or something worse, guys are usually more comfortable rubbing some dirt on it than seeing a doctor. The same is true for erectile dysfunction. Studies show that 70% of guys who experience ED don't get treated for it. Thankfully, Roman created an easy way to chat with a doctor online. With Roman, you can get medical care for ED, if appropriate, from the comfort and privacy of your own home. You can handle everything online in a convenient, discreet manner. Getting started is simple. Just go to getroman.com/bluewire and complete an online visit. If your doctor decides that treatment would be appropriate, type genuine medication that can be delivered in a discreet packaging right to your door with free 2-day shipping. Guys, go talk to the doctor. Erectile dysfunction can be tough to tackle, but it's really important to get it checked out. With Roman, it's easy to connect with a doctor. Just go to getroman.com/bluewire to get a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. That's getroman.com/bluewire for a free visit to get started. getroman.com/bluewire.
This is Tom Leander, and you're listening to the Timeline Podcast with Mike and Sam. He elevates and detonates.
All right, Sam, let's break down our top 5 free agent options, starting with 5, going down to 1. Of course, we'll do our number 5. Throughout this, we'll talk about, actually, let's do it right before number 1. Let's do our honorary mentions at that point. There are a lot of free agents. We talked about it. It seems like half the league is a free agent this year, which is why there's so much cap space available and out there for people to get. So let's alternate 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Actually, go ahead and you go first, Sam. Let's start with your number 5.
All right. My free agent at number 5 is, I think, going to come in a left field for most people because it's not technically at a position of need for the Phoenix Suns. I'm going to go with Charlotte Hornets shooting guard Jeremy Lamb.
Interesting.
And you're probably thinking, what the fuck, Sam? Jeremy Lamb is going to cost money. He's not a point guard. He's not a power forward. He averages 2 assists per game. You'd be correct on all of those things. First of all, I want to give a shout out to, I think we shout him out every week now at some point on the pod, Alessandro Cosi on Twitter, because he's the one who really inspired this morning. I realized that Jeremy Lamb was a free agent a couple of months ago and then kind of put it out of my mind. And then seeing Ali talk about it on Twitter today really sort of re-sparked that interest. And I was looking into his game a little bit more. When the Suns made all of the moves they did on draft day, I was thinking, or I came away from that night under the assumption that the Suns had addressed their shooting, but the main priorities going forward, and you're going to see this as a consistent theme in the rest of my top 5, is defense and creativity. Not necessarily just playmaking, but creativity. Guys who can go get a bucket. This is something that I talked about last week when we lost TJ Warren, that I was sad about the fact that just Devin Booker and Kelly Oubre alone as perimeter-centric players, you can't really rely on that to create an offense. I think too often we're focused on the fact that in this day and age in the NBA, you want to fill your roster with three-point shooters and get as much spacing as possible. But we kind of neglect the other side of the equation, where if you just fill a roster with 5 guys like, say Aaron Baines is a 35% three-point shooter, he's not going to put it on the floor. If you just put 5 catch and shoot guys with no creativity, with no ability to create dribble drive penetration, you're not going to get those open looks that you're looking for. And so the reason I like Jeremy Lamb, first of all, for those who don't know, averaged 15 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists per game this season on 55% true shooting. He was benched in the second half of the season for a little bit for their rookie Miles Bridges and for Dwayne Bacon as well. But he really just fits a 6th-man role. Mike, I'm going to stop for a second because I have a cat that is being really annoying next to me. Sorry.
I might just leave that in.
Okay, you can leave it in if you want. She's scratching at a door, so I'm just going to go get that really quickly. All right, I'm back. She has this weird thing where she gets like offended if there's a closed door that she can't access. All right, where was I?
I'm not even sure at this point.
All right, so Jeremy Lamb. I'm really into Jeremy Lamb, guys. 15 points. That's what I was talking about. Okay, Jeremy Lamb is basically like Jamal Crawford, but good. So like it pissed me off when Jamal Crawford would pound the ball into the floor, go for these high elbow jumpers consistently last season, right? Because it was inefficient offense. But if you can do it on 55% true shooting, someone in your offense needs to play that role. Close to 50% of Jeremy Lamb's field goals come unassisted. I'm probably going to bring up today a bunch of times Synergy play type data. It's publicly available data from Synergy that the NBA tracks and posts on their website, where you can look at how players perform in certain play types and what percentile they rank in efficiency. It's something that I cite all the time in my free agent scouting video breakdowns on our YouTube channel. Jeremy Lamb ranked in the 75th percentile in efficiency in transition, the 57th percentile in isolation. He had almost as many isolation possessions as Donovan Mitchell and a better efficiency than Donovan Mitchell. He was the 74th percentile on the pick and roll and the 64th percentile as a catch and shoot spot up guy. That's the other thing. He can catch and shoot. He can spot up. But more importantly, you can give him the ball and have him go get a bucket. And that's something that these other shooters that I'm kind of interested in, but not as interested in on the free agent market, like a Wayne Ellington or a Reggie Bullock, they just can't do the same thing for your offense off the bench. If you have a Tyler Johnson and Jeremy Lamb bench behind an actual starting caliber point guard and Devin Booker, and then you have basically almost a starting caliber bench backcourt behind your actual starting caliber starting backcourt, if that makes sense. You have four guards with maximum creativity who can create opportunities for other players. And then you still fill out your roster with your catch and shoot guys. Dario Saric is a catch and shoot guy. Mikal Bridges is a catch and shoot guy. I'm trying to think of other players on our team right now.
Cameron Johnson.
Cameron Johnson is a catch and shoot guy. Ty Jerome is, to an extent, going to be we'll see how much his athleticism holds up or is a detriment to him at the next level, but he might be a catch and shoot guy for a little bit. Aaron Baines is a catch and shoot guy. But so, yeah, I just really like the idea of Jeremy Lamb being a creative guard. You can pair him here's the thing. If the Suns go in with $13 million in cap space, I think Jeremy Lamb is going to cost about $10 million because the Charlotte Hornets are kind of fucked with their cap situation. I think he's probably going to be looking for a 3 or 4 year deal, basically a TJ Warren contract to be your TJ Warren replacement. If the Suns go in with $13 million, I don't want Jeremy Lamb. But if the Suns can trade Josh Jackson and Elie Kobo, or even, if it ends up being a wave and stretch of Tyler Johnson and they go in with enough money to go out, get a starting caliber point guard, your Pat Bev, your Ricky Rubio, your Darren Collison, whoever it may be, and pair that player with yet another good backcourt partner in Jeremy Lamb, I think that could work out really well. Creativity.
That's a really interesting pick. Really interesting pick. I think that I assumed throughout this that we're going to have some overlap in our list, and I thought that was fine because we can talk about those players as they overlap. But he was not on my list, Sam.
Yeah, he's not going to be okay. And here's the other thing: no defense, right?
Yeah.
I got to concede that.
Yeah.
But hey, we didn't care about defense except for Aaron Baines, who's not that much better defensively than Rashawn Holmes. Like, can we be honest? Saric didn't improve our defense. Cam Johnson didn't improve our defense. Mm-hmm. Ty Jerome didn't improve our defense. What's one more? Let's score a lot of points.
I'm cool with it. I think, like I talked about in the last podcast, it's impossible to fix everything in one off season. You can get slightly better at certain things, but if you can drastically improve the offense, and over time, I think you can start to fix the defense once the team has a clearer vision on what they're doing and how they're playing. I'm into it. I'm into it. I will say though, my first pick at number 5. Is a defensive player. He's not quite an offensive player, and that is Al-Farouq Aminu. First off, do you have Aminu on your list?
Not in my top 5, but I would be totally cool with Aminu coming to Phoenix.
Yeah, so big thing about Aminu. When we put this team together, the way that this team is shaping up right now, not a lot of defense. There's just not a lot of guys who are excellent defenders. Basically, we talked about it in the last podcast. We're kind of relying on Mikal Bridges and then potentially Aaron Baines to come in and be a good defender off the bench. That's a lot of work for two guys to carry the defense of an entire team. So as we put the players together, as we put the pieces together in the draft, it became clear to me that we needed a defensive player in that starting lineup, assuming that we're capable of moving Dario Saric to the bench, which I am okay with, as we talked about at the beginning of this podcast. I'm not guaranteeing Dario Saric a starting role. I'm not sure that he's a starting caliber power forward at this point, at least not on a good team. That's not to say that I don't think Dario Saric can be a starting caliber power forward at some point in his career. He shot 38% with the Minnesota Timberwolves after the trade, and that's pretty damn good. But I will say about Al-Farouq Aminu, he shot 41% from the left corner. He shot 37.5% from the right corner. That's excellent shooting percentages from the corner from a power forward position. Now, we would need him to play power forward. He's 6'9", 220 pounds. He still has a higher rebound percentage than a 7-foot Dragan Bender. He rebounds more than Dragan Bender. He's an excellent defender. Part of the reason he's a good defender, another part of the reason he is a good rebounder is he has a 7'2" wingspan. So although he is 6'9", he has long arms. He's switchable on defense. We talked about him. Sam, actually, you talked about him in your videos about power forward free agents. We should probably repost that at some point, actually, since it's been a while since we talked about that. And now's a good time to talk about that one.
I remember making that video because of how frustrated I was at the Suns getting out-rebounded by 10 rebounds every night.
Yeah.
Totally jumped the gun. I think we posted that in like January.
One of our first YouTube
like
videos.
Yeah, I like Aminu a lot. And he's the Houston Rockets James Harden, type of system player.
Yeah.
Mikal Bridges or Kelly Oubre at small forward, and then Aminu at power forward is exactly the same. Actually, we could just go out and say Kelly Oubre plus Mikal Bridges plus Al-Farouq Aminu as like your tweener rotation is pretty damn similar to Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, Luke Bahamute that Houston was rolling out in the Western Conference Finals. The only difference between those teams, one, James Harden is an MVP caliber player, and we're not sure that Devin Booker is that player yet. But Houston also had Chris Paul next to James Harden in the backcourt, a supremely creative offensive mind. And, so far Devin Booker doesn't have that.
Yeah. Here's a stat for you that you'll like, Sam. VORP, value over replacement player. Last year, Al-Farouq Aminu was a 1.7. That would actually lead the Suns for what the Suns did last year. So, obviously he's not a better player than Devin Booker. We're not going to say that. But I think the value that a player like Al-Farouq Aminu brings is pretty massive. It's just they fill all kinds of holes that players don't want to do. Players don't want to stand in the corner and just shoot threes. Players don't want to defend the best player on the other team. They don't want to take that on. Especially players like Devin Booker or D'Angelo Russell or even DeAndre Ayton. These guys don't want that. They want other guys to be able to do that.
Was or was not Ayton's, I don't know if that's a sentence, was Ayton's best performance against Giannis? Yes.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Did he rise to the occasion? Yes.
Yes.
But I understand what you're saying.
If Aminu was on the team, would he guard Giannis?
Yeah.
He would. And it wouldn't be such a bad thing to allow, DeAndre. Of course, there would be possessions that DeAndre Ayton, and maybe DeAndre Ayton will develop in the point where it must be DeAndre Ayton that takes on that role at some point. But at this point, for guys like Devin Booker, Al-Farouq Aminu is a really good fit because he can take the dirty work that you don't really want to do. And he's not, like you said, this team is suffering right now from creation. There's not a lot of creation. We're basically going to rely heavily on Devin Booker, assuming we don't get another player in free agency to create their own shot. Hopefully that can be something that DeAndre Ayton, of course, develops, but you gotta get it to him for him to create. So you need guards to do that as well. So Al-Farouq Aminu does not do that, but he does fill a hole at power forward on a team that only has one on the roster right now, and I think he would be a good fit for this team. And I don't know what here's the thing I will say, I am very bad at guessing what this is going to be as far as the market, because there's so many teams with cap space, and there's so many teams that are looking for stars, and most of those stars are going to go to the Nets, it sounds like. So I assume that there's going to be a lot of money out there and available for other players. So do I know what Al-Farouq Aminu is going to get? No, he made less than 10 million every year of his career so far. I would imagine he'll be getting closer to 10 million in his future contract. Maybe he'd be willing to sign a shorter deal. I'm not sure. Do you have any thoughts on what you think Al-Farouq Aminu could get in free agency?
Yeah, I'm pretty bad at this too. I was going to guess
hard.
like 12.
Yeah, I would say 10,
I was
11, or
gonna
12.
Yeah, I was going to guess he's looking for a 3-year, 12 per year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a fair one. So that would be a good fit for me. That's my number 5. Sounds like you're on board, although he didn't make your list. What is your number 4, Sam?
My number 4 is the guy that I would ideally pair with Jeremy Lamb.
Oh.
And that's Ricky Rubio.
Okay, that's my number 4 too.
Oh, okay, great. So we can save a little bit of time rather than talk for 2 hours about free agency. Do you, should I still go first?
Yeah, go ahead. Talk about him.
Okay, so here's the thing. The Suns did one thing. Even if you're as pessimistic as some people claim that I am about what the Suns did during the draft, which I'm really not, you have to admit that the Suns improved their shooting. And they improved their shooting to the point where we have a roster that the only unknown is DeAndre Ayton. You know, we assume he's going to start shooting threes. We don't know what percentage he's going to shoot them at. But if you assume that Kelly Oubre, Mikal Bridges, Devin Booker, Tyler Johnson, Dario Saric, Aaron Baines, Cam Johnson, Ty Jerome, all these guys are probably like 34% three-point shooters or better. Suddenly, Ricky Rubio, the guy who's good at literally everything except shooting, starts to make a lot more sense.
Right.
And I get that he's not Malcolm Brogdon, and I get that he's not D'Angelo Russell, and I get that he comes with a limited ceiling, but at a certain point, you won 19 games. It just sucks because this is exactly what we were saying this time last year. But you won 19 games. Sometimes you need incremental improvement. Focus on becoming a 30 or 35 win team before you win 60 games. And Ricky Rubio would help the Suns do that. I like that he's become a lot more of a creative offensive player, not just in terms of his passing, which is very, very good. Obviously, he'd do a fantastic job facilitating the Suns' offense. But the advantage of him over a player like, say, Patrick Beverley is just he's a more talented mid-range scorer. He's a more talented player at finishing at the rim than ever before. I mentioned in my free agent scouting breakdown video, he shot a career high 58% at the rim this season. He shot 45% for mid-range 3 years in a row. And he's a guy who's a proven contributor in the playoffs. I mean, he averaged a very solid 15 points, 8 assists, and 2 steals per game in the playoffs this year. Granted, it was 5 games and they were out. But he's a guy who's been in the playoffs before these past 2 years for Utah. And I just think he would bring the perfect blend of defense, playmaking, and what was the other thing? Veteran leadership. And you can sort of ignore the fact that he's still going to be probably pretty bad at shooting.
And I think an important point of that is he won't be as expensive as probably some of the other guys on your list. Definitely not some of the guys on my list. I feel like he's more gettable. And I also think that there's not a lot of teams that have massive point guard holes at this point. There's Indiana, there's Orlando, depending on how you feel about them. There's the Lakers, and then there's the Suns. So I don't think there's a massive market. There's a lot of free agents. I don't think there's a massive market for point guards. I think point guards is one of the positions that most teams kind of have set going forward. And then depending on how you feel, the Timberwolves supposedly want to get in the race for some point guards as well. They just have to make some moves to do it because technically they have a few on their roster right now. So we'll see what they end up doing. So assuming they don't create a lot of space, it's not a huge market for point guards. And I think Ricky Rubio can be gotten for maybe maybe 15 million. It almost feels a little high for him because of his lack of shooting, but I wouldn't be surprised if something gets close to that in this market. But like you said, an excellent passer, would immediately pass Ty Jerome as the best passer on our team. He's a good defender. Not a perfect defender, but I think a defender that can take the best guard on the other team for the majority of the game, and then we can put Mikal Bridges on him to lock him down in crunch time. Good anticipation, of course, in the passing lane, is able to get out there. He's got size. He's not a small point guard as well. He's 6'4", I believe he's listed at. Looks pretty tall for 6'4". And then he would be an immediate Valley boy. He looks like a Valley boy. So assuming we get to keep Kelly Oubre in this scenario, I think he'd be able to go out into town with them. Spanish with the long hair, I think he'd do fine in Scottsdale. So I'm a big fan of Ricky Rubio. I think he'd do relatively well on this team as well. I will say he actually was higher on my list. I bumped him down, and I'll talk about why once we get to the next pick here. But that's funny that we both had him at number 4. Not the perfect, not the perfect one, but I think he would be a good player for the team if we did end up getting him. And I liked what you said about every player on the team right now can kind of shoot a 3. So if you put Ricky Rubio on it, it's not as big of a deal. One thing I will say about Rubio too, he doesn't quite fit exactly what James Jones has been talking about and Monty Williams has been talking about for this team. They want to run a system where everyone touches the ball moves a lot, 1 or 2 dribbles each, quick decisions, moving the ball fast. Ricky Rubio can do that, but his lack of shooting actually affects him a little bit negatively in that area, because when you have Ricky Rubio, you almost want him to dominate the ball a little bit more than that. You almost want him running pick and roll after pick and roll to see what he can get open on the ball. So I'm not sure that they're looking for a player like that, because I think part of the problem, what made him a little less effective in the Utah offense, is Utah was trying to do that as well, and I think Mike Conley's perfect for that. Mike Conley can catch and shoot. He's going to be excellent on that team. But I think the reason his numbers dipped a little bit in Utah is because of that shooting, and they wanted to keep the ball moving relatively quickly. And he still can do it. He's definitely going to make some good decisions quickly. But if you have Ricky Rubio, you almost want him running pick and roll after pick and roll, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's true. You're right. We saw him for the past 2 years. That's why his assist numbers dipped, because they put the ball out of his hands and into the hands of other good decision makers like Donovan Mitchell and Joe Ingles. But that's when we finally saw, maybe he just needed a push. Like, because Ricky, he's pretty old. Like, his past 2 seasons, he was 29 and 30. And that little push of forcing him to make quick decisions with the ball led to, he's not a great scorer, but his best 2 scoring seasons yet.
Yeah.
So maybe that's an indication that, that could also be good for his game in some ways. If his shooting comes back to what it was 2 years ago, then really there are no flaws.
Right.
It's
Definitely.
Just if we assume he shoots like he did last season, and that's the real Ricky Rubio, which I'm going to assume it is, and take anything else as like a bonus, then that would be bad. The only other thing I want to say, $15 million, definitely too high for Rubio.
Yeah.
If we were going to be able to trade Josh Jackson and Elliot Kobo and create about $21 million in space, then I was hoping to get Ricky for like 12 and pair him with Lamb for like 9.
That's
it's a little optimistic on my end, to be honest. Like you might just not be able to do that. But yeah, if Ricky's asking for 15, I'm calling up Pat Bev. I'm even maybe calling up Darren Collison at that point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Let's move on. Number 3. What's your number 3?
Okay. This guy, by some metrics, is the greatest player of all time.
Okay.
I'm not kidding.
Okay.
Okay. Bear with me.
I think I know who it is.
A group of 6 players. Actually, is it 6? Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 players. These following 6 players have played 800 career games. They've averaged at least 13.5 points, 6 rebounds, 1.5 steals on a splendid 32% 3-point shooting. Do you want to know who those 6 players are?
Yes.
Can you guess?
No.
Michael Jordan.
Okay.
LeBron James.
Okay.
Larry Bird.
Uh-huh.
Scottie Pippen.
Okay.
Sean Marion. The
Interesting.
king of versatility.
Interesting.
And the number 3 on my list, Thaddeus Young.
All right. All
You
right.
want to talk about VORP? You want to talk about VORP? Because I'm glad you brought up a VORP stat already.
Yeah.
You knew I was going to bring up a VORP stat myself, though.
Absolutely.
Career high VORP of 3.1 for Thaddeus Young, ranked 31st in the NBA. Primarily not because of his offensive impact, which I'm going to talk about that in a second, but because of his defensive impact. Thaddeus Young is the glue that makes the Indiana Pacers defense run. And I don't want to completely discredit a guy like Miles Turner, who's fantastic all season long. Like, obviously, it would be a downgrade from going from Miles Turner to DeAndre Ayton at the center spot. But Thad Young has, for years and years and years, racked up steals and deflections for a power forward in a way that you wouldn't expect guys to do. He's got a good plus wingspan. He's a good communicator down there. Literally everyone in the Pacers organization says that this is a great mentor, a great guy for chemistry purposes. The fan base loves him. And yet Indiana just doesn't really have the money to keep him.
Right.
And Sabonis is there lurking at power forward and is coming off a fantastic season. And Thad Young is getting older and Sabonis is getting, well, I guess they're both getting older, but Sabonis is young and Thad Young is old. Mm-hmm. So they can afford to maybe wedge him into Sabonis into the starting power forward spot and have Thad Young go. and look for other replacement cheaper options, while the Suns could snatch up a player who is just really good all around. I mean, he's capable of shooting threes. He averages 3 assists per 36 on a good assist to turnover ratio. He's a guy who can operate from the elbow and be creative with the ball. Again, that's what we're emphasizing, at least as part of my list, creativity and defense, and shooting a cherry on top if you can get it. He's got a rock solid offensive rebound rate of 8.7%. That's great for a power forward. He's just a guy who can do a little bit of everything. And I really think, I don't know how Dario Saric would feel about it because he'd be relegated to the backup role, but I really think Thad Young would be a great, solid piece to have next to DeAndre Ayton in the front court.
Thad Young was not on my top 5, but he was on my honorable mentions because he's a perfect fit. I think Thad Young is the type of player that when you looked at what happened in the draft over last week, that makes even more sense now for this team because of the lack of defense around this team right now. Everyone on the roster, like I said, is a negative defender except for 2 players, essentially. That means you need to bolster that defense somehow, and Thaddeus Young is a perfect example. I think overall, he's an excellent fit next to DeAndre Ayton because of that defense, because of the three-point shooting. Not an excellent three-point shooting, but an above-average three-point shooter at his position, which is, I think, an important point to make. He's a power forward. He shot about 35% last year, and that's relatively good. I mean, that's above what you want at that position, essentially. And I think he can make up for a lot of defensive holes. I also think when we talk about the type of guys, of course, that we're going to bring this up a few times, or at least I am, that Monty and James Jones have been talking about, guys that can make quick decisions, guys that can score. They want him to score at 3 levels, not quite something Thad Young can do, but he can. He can finish, and he's not quite someone who can create for himself, and that's not what you would want him to do in that role anyway. But I think he would be it's kind of for all the reasons that I like Aminu, I like Thad Young. I think that it's a perfect example of a type of guy that you can fit here. When you're talking about cap space and when you're talking about using cap space wisely, if you're not going to get a star, if you will, some of the other players that we're probably going to talk about later on in this podcast, you want a guy like Thad Young and you want a guy like Ricky Rubio. That's a good example. These 2 guys paired together in our starting lineup with everyone else that we have would not be a bad mix of guys to get if you can make the cap space to get them and even still potentially keep Kelly Oubre. That's something that's actually possible this summer, assuming these guys aren't overpaid by other teams. I think that Thaddeus Young will be a player that other teams will want. Like I said, I'm not even going to try to guess his market. I'll be honest. I'm not even going to try.
I'm going to guess I'm going to guess 14.
Yeah. I could see
I'm
that.
going to guess I think he's a little more expensive than Rubio, and that's why I was going to say you could go into free agency and just sign Thad Young, and then you're rolling into the season with Tyler Johnson as your starting point guard. I don't think that's the end of the world.
No.
But if you can get Josh Jackson and Ellie Kobo off, I know Suns fans have been kind of making a meme out of this guy's name because like he's the least sexy point guard we could go after. But because Thad Young costs a little bit more, I'd be looking to pair him. Maybe you go out and get Corey Joseph as your point guard.
Yeah.
Maybe you look at throwing an offer sheet at Tyus Jones. Or just at that point, you just bring in someone to be like a little bit more of a steady backup point guard, but you're confident in Tyler Johnson. Look, Tyler Johnson, Devin Booker, Kelly Oubre, Thad Young, and DeAndre Ayton is a pretty good starting lineup.
Yeah, I wouldn't be overly disappointed in that going into next season. With Thad Young, he has to buy in. That's the main thing with Thaddeus Young. He has to buy into this team. He has to believe in the vision going forward because he's an older guy. He's 30. So you don't want everyone's afraid of an Ariza situation here, and you don't want that type of situation going forward. So I think if you want Thad Young to choose the Suns, because he's probably going to have a few options, you're going to probably have to sell him on the vision, and that would likely mean including other players in this vision to potentially show that they're trying to compete. It can't just be Thaddeus Young by himself. It has to be a combination of Thad Young and Corey Joseph, like you said, or potentially Ricky Rubio if you could make the space. That's the kind of thing that could probably sell it to him. Hey, you're not going to be the only 30-year-old on this team. Maybe we'll have another one that can help.
Aaron Baines.
Oh, yeah, we got Aaron Baines now, the oldest guy on the team.
That's the other thing, actually. Thad Young and Aaron Baines next to each other on the front court would be...
That's interesting.
That's some good protection behind whatever rookie guards we're throwing out there.
Yep. All right, you ready for my number 3 here?
Yep. Fire away.
All right, this is a 6'5" player. Do you know who it is yet?
Wait. Let me think. Is it... How tall is Satoransky?
No, it's not Satoransky. Okay. So he shot 50, 40, 90 this year. He's a restricted free agent. He's a solid second ball handler, and his name is Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah.
He plays for
Yeah.
the Bucks. Now, Malcolm Brogdon, I had lower on my list. The reason I had Malcolm Brogdon lower on my list previously was because I thought there is absolutely no way that the Bucks will let him go. The Bucks are in a complex situation this year, and part of the reason is because they allowed Rich Paul to bend them over a barrel with Eric Bledsoe. They are in a position where 3 of their best players are now free agents. Those 3 players are Brook Lopez, Malcolm Brogdon, and Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton is a very important player for the Bucks, and he's likely going to command a max salary. Whether or not you believe he is worth it is irrelevant. I actually think that he likely is in this market worth a max contract, because for the Bucks, giving him a max contract could mean keeping Giannis in the future. That means that they're going to use a lot of their cap space on Chris Middleton. They will have more cap space beyond that. They're going to go likely into the luxury tax at some point. Would they be willing to do that for Malcolm Brogdon, or would they be willing to do that for Brook Lopez? That's the question. They likely can't get all 3. Brook Lopez is a very important piece to what the Bucks are building, because Giannis needs space and they still need size on defense, and Malcolm Brogdon can provide space, but he does not provide the size that Brook Lopez provides. So the reason I moved him up on my list to number 3, I actually think he would be the best fit. He could potentially be number 1 on my list just by fit alone. He's an excellent defender. He can distribute the ball very well. Excellent assisted turnover ratio. The best shooter that we're going to talk about on this team right now, out of all the free agents that I can talk about, maybe Cameron Johnson can be better at some point, but Malcolm Brogdon is the best current shooter. Excellent at spot-up shooting. You had an excellent list of point guards and what they're good at and what they're not good at. I was shocked by how good he was in isolation. I can't imagine he isolates a lot, but his isolation stats are much better than I expected. And he's an excellent defender that could take the best guard on the other team. The reason I moved him up is because Woj and Zach Lowe, who did a show earlier today, said that Malcolm Brogdon is likely going to be the player that's left out. And if the Suns end up without him, that's going to be difficult because he's a perfect fit. And kind of when we talk about the players that James Johnson and Monty Williams want, he is that. They're basically describing Malcolm Brogdon. He can do it all. So I think he's a perfect fit. Is he on your list, Sam?
Yes.
Is he number 1?
I mean, I can't, spoil that.
Okay, what do you think about Malcolm? Go ahead and talk about him.
I mean, yeah, I really, well, he's at least number 1 or number 2, right? To bring up, so I just tweeted out a list of synergy data on all of these available point guards. And, this data isn't always great to look at. I have a feeling that teams look at this for like a minute, but they don't necessarily heavily factor it into their considerations because, for instance, Malcolm Brogdon ranks in the 73rd percentile in efficiency in transition. Synergy data tracks how well you score. It doesn't track how well you create for others. And at the point guard position in particular, that's really important. Ricky Rubio ranks in the 10th percentile in transition. We know that Ricky Rubio is a much, much better facilitator out in open space than Malcolm Brogdon is. I broke down in my video, Brogdon is he's not comfortable being a lead guard yet, which, he maybe wouldn't have to do that next to Devin Booker either. But so for him, 73rd percentile in transition, that's a product of playing with the Bucks, where everyone on that roster is so good, particularly Giannis, that you are also going to get clean looks in transition. The rest of the stuff, however, I buy. He's becoming better as an isolation player. He's much better. He uses his length to finish at the rim. In fact, he's a much better finisher at the rim than D'Angelo Russell. And I think that's something that's worth noting. He's comfortable operating in the pick and roll, definitely as a secondary ball handler. And he is an elite spot-up shooter who is an adaptive defender as well. That's the other thing we have to consider here. He just played an entire season playing drop coverage in Mike Budenholzer's number 1 ranked defense in the entire NBA. But he's got a 6'11" wingspan. You can easily have him switch onto other players in a different scheme as well. He's like putty. You can mold him into whatever you want. Mm-hmm. So with Malcolm Brogdon, look, I think it's a conversation of money, obviously.
Yeah.
First of all, one thing that's been discussed in the past, for instance, is Giannis's extension is looming. So how could you maybe get the Bucks to reject this offer sheet? Maybe if you offered Malcolm Brogdon 8% raises every year, and maxed out the number that that have his contract go up to some ridiculous amount in year 4 or 5, then maybe you could get them to back off a little bit. But at that point, if you're paying Malcolm Brogdon, like, I don't know, $27 million towards the end of his contract, do you really want to be doing that?
Yeah. I don't know. It's the thing is Malcolm Brogdon is worth different things to different teams. I think he's an interesting player here. We talked about there's not a lot of teams that need a point guard at this point. There's the Bulls are another team that I didn't mention, but they just took a point guard, so I'm not sure that they'd be willing to offer Malcolm Brogdon anything. It's just what is that limit for the Bucks and what is that limit for the Suns? This is something I tweeted about today. 22 million, is that too much per year for the Suns? Like
No, I'd be totally open if the Suns could create the 22 million, which they know they can, for the 1,000th time today. If you get off Josh Jackson and Elliot Kobo together, or DeAnthony Melton, which I'd be more sad about, that's a perfect amount to sign Malcolm Brogdon for 22 million. And then you go out and you fill out your bench with there are some candidates out there with the room exception or even the biannual exception.
Yeah,
and it's a good team. Like, here's the thing, because we're obviously going to talk about D'Angelo Russell too. Are we sure that D'Angelo Russell, even though he just made the All-Star team, factoring in fit, I understand the argument that D'Angelo Russell is younger and that he potentially has more room to grow. But are we sure that D'Angelo Russell is better than Malcolm Brogdon right now?
Right now, no.
Next year?
No. I'm definitely not sure of that. Malcolm Brogdon is older, though. And D'Angelo Russell has a lot more time to get better. So I have some thoughts. Let me save my D'Angelo Russell thoughts for just a second. Let's quickly say Malcolm Brogdon is kind of the perfect fit just all around. And I think we're both willing to offer him upwards of 20 million. And I think that's what it would take. Do you think that Malcolm Brogdon would want to play for the Phoenix Suns is the question that I have.
Yeah, I don't see why not. If they offer
coming
enough
from the
money.
Bucks, yeah, I mean the money matters. The money matters a lot in this conversation. It would be really nice to lock down the perfect backcourt partner for Devin Booker for 3, 4, 5 years. Now, another question: Malcolm Brogdon has a metal plate in his foot.
Yeah,
Malcolm Brogdon,
that's important.
It's a fear here. Do you think that is a big enough deal that it would not be worth risking that amount of cap space on a player for that long of a time? Because if that comes back to bite him, that could affect him dramatically in the future. Now, he's still young, like we said, but he's not, he has that in his history here. And is that enough to worry too much about giving him that level of money?
Look, I'm not going to lie to you. It's very concerning. But at a certain point, we've been talking about how bad the 2020 draft class is. We're not going to have this cap space forever, because eventually the extensions are going to start coming for these young players we've been drafting. They're not coming yet because the guys we drafted a few years ago were busts up until now. Josh Jackson and Bender and Chris and all them. But eventually you're going to have to extend Ayton and Bridges. And we already know next year is a no-go. I think you got to try.
Yeah.
You got to try and take your chances with your new training staff. And we don't know how effective that training staff is either.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
there you go.
We don't even know if we have a training staff yet. I'm still convinced that they're going to use a third party and we're not going to actually have a training staff, but we'll see. Number 2, I think I'm going to say my number 2 first, because I think I know who your top 2 are. Are you okay with that?
I already said who my top 2 are, didn't I?
Oh, no. Who did you? I don't think you did. Or did you?
Never mind. Fuck.
My number 2, and I don't know if I told you that I was going to include this guy, is Kelly Oubre.
Oh, what? Fuck you. You didn't tell me.
I think it's important to include him as one of the potential guys, because I don't think it's a guarantee. And this is the point that I wanted to bang home here. We just drafted Cameron Johnson. I'm not sure if I'm going to call him Cam or Cameron. I'm going to have to decide that. It's just easy to say Cam. One of my best friends is named Cam, so I'm going to call him Cam. We just drafted Cam Johnson. We still have Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges is capable of being a starter right now, in my opinion. Now, his offense has to develop. It just does. It has to develop if he's going to be as good as we expect him to be in the future. But I do believe he's the type of guy to put in the work to get better offensively and become a high-level starter in the future of his career. We also have Cam Johnson, who could potentially be a super high-level shooter coming off the bench to back him up. It is not a guarantee that we will sign Kelly Oubre. We did give up assets to get him, so it would make sense. And the front office we have now did get him. But don't forget, They accidentally traded for him. They were trying to send Kelly Oubre somewhere else, to Memphis originally, and get a guard on our team instead of Kelly Oubre, and the trade was just changed at the last minute to get Kelly Oubre. I'm not overly convinced that Kelly Oubre is the number one decision for the Phoenix Suns, but I do think he is an important player for this team. I think Kelly Oubre could be gotten for less than $15 million a year. I think that what we've seen was the best stretch of his career with the Phoenix Suns, and I think that a lot of other teams would be taking a massive risk if they were to give him any more money than that. And if they do, I think they will let him go. I think it's something that they're not willing to give to him beyond that, maybe a 14 or 15 million. I'm not sure they'd be willing to do that. Yes, he's a good defender, but is he a solid enough shooter for clearly the vision that they have for this team going forward? I'm not sure that he is. I love Kelly Oubre. I think he brings a lot to this team. I think it's important that he wants to be here. He's my number 2 guy on my list. I worry that he's not a guarantee because his cap hold is money that can be used for someone else if we do get, say, maybe Malcolm Brogdon. I'm not sure Kelly Oubre and Malcolm Brogdon are two players that could play or join this team together in this offseason with the amount of cap space that we have. I don't know, but I hope he is because I like Kelly Oubre a lot.
If you can't get the Josh Jackson trade to go through, then you can waive and stretch Tyler. You know, and then you've got the money, but I understand your concerns about that. Like the thing, I don't really want to waive and stretch Tyler because as a bench player, he'd be really solid.
It only takes one team. This is the problem with restricted free agency. It's not about his market across the NBA. It's about what his market is to every team. Now, for example, the Kings. The Kings just traded Harrison Barnes. Could the Kings offer Kelly Oubre $18 million a year to go to the Kings right now when they strike out? Yeah.
Yeah. Kelly can go there. Yeah. For $18 million, no thanks.
Yeah. I really like Kelly Oubre, but I do think the likelihood of him not being on the team at the end of free agency is higher than most Suns fans are willing to admit at this point, because I think they're just writing him in as a guarantee. And I wanted to put him on this list to just demonstrate the fact that it's not a guarantee. You named all the teams with cap space. Sam, there were how many? 13 teams with more cap space than us? 12 teams with more cap space?
Yeah, before we make any moves, it's 12 teams.
Yeah. So
let's say we make moves and get up. Let's say we get to that like $22 million figure that we've been talking about. There's still going to be 9 teams ahead of us.
Yeah. So it's just not a guarantee, in my opinion, that he's going to come here. I know I'm assuming your top 2 are in some way D'Angelo Russell and Malcolm Brogdon. One is
number 2 is going to be Tyler Dorsey. Number 1 was going to be Wayne Ellington. Number 2 is D'Angelo Russell.
Number 2 is D'Angelo Russell. Okay, so number 1 is Malcolm Brogdon. We already talked about Malcolm Brogdon. Let me just make one point on D'Angelo Russell real quick. Here are the top point guards under the age of 25 years old. D'Angelo Russell, De'Aaron Fox, Ben Simmons, Trae Young. Can you think of any others that should be on that list?
Can you repeat the names? Sorry.
Sure. Top point guards under 25. D'Angelo
25.
Russell, under 25. D'Angelo Russell, De'Aaron Fox, Ben Simmons, and Trae Young. Are there any guys that I forgot about?
No.
Yeah.
No.
There is a chance to me. D'Angelo Russell is my number 1 player, I should say. There is a chance to me that D'Angelo Russell is the best point guard in the NBA at some point in his next contract. I think that's actually possible. Now, thinking about this ahead of time, I did not have D'Angelo Russell as my number 1 player. You and I talked previously. I actually preferred Malcolm Brogdon in the past to D'Angelo Russell. I think D'Angelo Russell is going to be more available than Malcolm Brogdon. That affects my rankings here. I also think that the idea that a player that could potentially be the best point guard in the NBA at some point in his career becoming available in free agency is something that never, ever, ever happens. It just does not happen. The confluence of events that it took to create a D'Angelo Russell available in free agency to other teams, and we're assuming this happens. Kyrie Irving is, of course, probably going to the Nets. So that's what everyone's saying at this point. We're assuming this happens. It took Nick Young cheating on a famous pop star named Iggy Azalea and Magic Johnson thinking that is a bad enough thing to trade him to another team. And then that team, completely unlikely, making the playoffs with a bunch of cast-offs in the Brooklyn Nets. And then creating 2 max slots to potentially sign 2 of the best players in the NBA. This type of thing does not happen often. And I think for that reason alone, I would rank D'Angelo Russell my number 1 free agency target here, because it's just so unlikely that this happens. And I think it's a danger. It's a risk to sign D'Angelo Russell. But the idea that you can get a top point guard under the age of 25 on this roster at our biggest position of need is too tantalizing to me. So I had to list him as my number 1. What do you think of D'Angelo Russell?
I love him, obviously, as a player. Well, yeah, I really, really like him for all sorts of reasons. You know, I was saying before he doesn't finish well at the rim compared to Brogdon, but that doesn't take away from the fact that compared to Malcolm Brogdon, he is worlds and worlds better in terms of just his creativity. And again, that's the theme of the night, isn't it? We want creativity. We want players who are amazing layup makers and floater makers like D'Angelo Russell. The penetration that a backcourt of him and Booker provides, it's something that's really, really tantalizing. With me, I did some research about money, because it comes down to money. You know, it's if you can get Malcolm Brogdon for $21 million, let's say, something like that, and he's probably overpaid by about, $5 or $6 million compared to his real value. That's the price you pay in restricted free agency. But D'Angelo Russell, paying him $27 million, maybe close to $10 million more than he's worth as his true value. So what I did is, over the past 5 seasons, well, okay, I'll start by saying this. D'Angelo Russell would be making $27 million. Devin Booker would be making $27 million. They'd actually be both be making a little bit more than that, like 27.2. And the salary cap next season is at $109 million. So those 2 players alone would take up 50% of the Suns' salary cap. Neither D'Angelo Russell or Devin Booker made an all-NBA team this year, which is to say neither of them were considered, top 15 players in the league. We're confident that they're all-star caliber players. We're not confident that either one can be an amazing all-NBA, generational talent. We're just not confident of that yet. Over the past 5 seasons now, this is where the research kicks in. There are 18 teams that have locked up 50% of their salary cap or more into just 2 players, where neither of those 2 players made an all-NBA team. What are the results of team building scenarios in which you just forfeit so much of your cap to only 2 players, and neither of those players ends up reaching that ceiling that you just desperately want them to reach? Here are the results. Those 18 teams, they went a combined 638 wins, 838 losses, for a winning percentage of 43%. Of those 18 teams, 6 of them went above 500. Of those 18 teams, 2 of them won 50 or more games. Those 2 teams are the 2018 Celtics and the 2015 Bulls. The fear with D'Angelo Russell isn't, the ceiling in which he could potentially become the best player, the best point guard in the NBA. The fear is that other scenario that you cap yourself out. You have to start a rebuild all over again after a few years, once you've realized you've hit the Portland ceiling, the Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum ceiling that you're just never going to quite get past because you locked up too much of your cap in 2 players who are good but not great.
No, I could see that. Just a couple things on Russell, though. Russell's he's not an excellent finisher around the rim. He's an excellent guy that can hit floaters, just like you said. He would be immediately the second best creator of a shot, maybe close to the best from Devin Booker right when he joins the team. He shoots a lot of 3-point shots, as we talked about, something that they clearly want this team to do, which would help this team out a lot. And, his creativity in passing is important as well. The idea that both Devin Booker and D'Angelo Russell essentially could average 7 assists or have averaged 7 assists is something that's miraculous. It's something that does not happen often, that you could have a backcourt with 2 guys that are that creative of passers on a team. I think they actually fit together really well. And I think it's important to point out, one of the reasons you can do what you're saying, which is dedicate that amount of the cap space to the backcourt only, is because you have potentially one of the best big men in the NBA on a rookie contract, somebody who's going to massively outperform their contract by the end of that contract, somebody that could potentially be the best center in the NBA as soon as Embiid stops playing games because he's injured. It's very possible for us to dedicate that amount of money. Now, in a normal scenario, does it make sense to do that? No. When you have a potentially generational center, hopefully, right? That's what we want him to be, locked up under a rookie contract, then yes, it's something that you need to consider. And I think it's important to say, these guys are making maxes, but they're making maxes in their first contract after their rookie deal. Not all maxes are equal. Some maxes can pay 35, 40. Look at John Wall's contract. This is not John Wall's contract. You're locking these guys up on their initial max contract that could potentially span the most important years of their career at a very young age. It just makes a lot of sense to look at a guy like D'Angelo Russell at this point. And I think if Gambo's right, and he usually is, to his credit, it's really unfortunate that we're not even considering it. The only thing that would make me feel better about that is if we potentially get Malcolm Brogdon on this team, who makes a lot of sense on this team. And I just think if we miss out on D'Angelo Russell, this could potentially be a grave mistake for the Phoenix Suns, and I really hope that they don't do it. At some point, when D'Angelo Russell is the best point guard in the NBA, assuming De'Aaron Fox doesn't immediately learn how to shoot, because De'Aaron Fox is the guy that can threaten that. I just don't believe in Ben Simmons. Trae Young is potentially there too. It's just his defensive potential is a lot worse than D'Angelo Russell's. If he ends up being the best, or even the third best point guard in the NBA, the fact that we had a chance to pair him with his best friend in Devin Booker and we didn't do it is going to come back to bite us in the ass. I guarantee it. And I really hope that they actually take a serious look at him at this point. And the theories about potentially trying to squash any ideas of tampering are actually true, because maybe that's the case. Maybe they're just feeding fake information to not reveal their plans, their grand plans in free agency. This free agency is very important. We've seen what James Jones does. He's very confident. This is one thing I want to say about James Jones. Taking Cam Johnson at 11 is a really confident thing to do. It took balls to do. He clearly believes in whatever vision they're planning for this team in the future, and this free agency is going to be very important for them. So I hope they're really taking a serious look at D'Angelo Russell, because I'll be honest, when I started making this list, I didn't have him as my number one. I had Malcolm Brogdon as my number one. As I went down, I did.
I've gone back and forth on it a million times myself. Like, I could tomorrow, by the time people are listening to this, have changed my number one and number two. And so obviously I really want the Suns to get D'Lo. I'll reiterate that. The only other thing I'm going to ask you, can you name a team whose top three players were all defensive detriments?
The Phoenix Suns in 2010, probably. That's probably
you
the
mean
best
like
example.
post Sean Marion? Yeah.
Yeah, post Sean Marion, when it was, I guess it would be Steve Nash, Jason
Amari
Richardson.
and Jason Richardson. Yeah,
Amari
that's
Stoudemire.
actually not a bad example.
Yeah, that's probably the best example, and that was the ceiling for that team. The ball bounces a few different ways. We've covered that team extensively on this podcast. Things can go a little differently. You have to believe in the potential of D'Angelo Russell being at least a serviceable defender when the competition gets really serious. You do have to buy into that. That's one thing I will say. Do I believe that? I'm not sure. But do I think that matters? Is that overly important in this conversation? No, I don't think it is. I think it's more important to get the best possible players on your team. As Daryl Morey put it, get as much Team USA guys as possible and then figure the rest of it out. Once you have 2 star players on the team, maybe 3 with DeAndre Ayton in the future, figure everything else out after that. If you have to make moves down the line in the future, then do that in the future. But get as much good players as possible on the team as soon as possible. That's what I think.
100% agree.
All right. Well, we do have, I wanted to do this before number one, but it got a little jumbled there at the end when you and I kind of overlapped too much. But we should talk about our honorable mentions. I had Thad Young, Patrick Beverly, Corey Joseph, we talked about, Darren Collison. Who else do you have?
So Pat Bev's there for me too. We've covered him on our YouTube channel. He'd be great for 3-and-D. That's just maybe not. The only reason he didn't end up in my top 5 is because I ended up valuing the creation of Rubio more than the defensive Pat Bev. And that's a minor thing, but he's still very much up there. Okay, so if we actually end up creating, say, $22 million in cap space and sign Malcolm Brogdon, then we're going to need a backup power forward. I've got 2 perfect, super, super realistic scenarios, and I know they're realistic because I know that Jeff Bauer and James Jones and Monty Williams like players that they've encountered in the past based on their track record already. So the first guy is Dante Cunningham. The second guy is Jonas Jerebko.
Oh, okay.
The Suns
I didn't expect that.
The Suns just need a solid stretch power forward. You want to continue with the theme of having a guy who can shoot threes, stagger minutes with Dario. Dario gets to be the starting power forward, but either Dante or Jonas can come in. They can play a solid 15 to 20 minutes. Dante shot 46% from deep last year for the Spurs. 38% from deep over the past 3 years. And I should mention his connection is that he played under Monty already in New Orleans several years ago before he actually shot threes. So Monty may have to use him a little bit differently this time because he's really changed his career quite a bit in the past several seasons, learning to become a stretch big. And as for Jonas played for the Pistons when Bauer was the GM. And he was traded to Boston after Bauer was gone as part of the Isaiah Thomas trade that we were also involved in, where we got back like Marcus Thornton or whatever. Just a fun fact.
Yeah.
But Jerebko has also shot 38% from deep over the past 4 seasons. Over the past 4 seasons, he's played for playoff teams in Golden State, Utah, and Boston. Either of these guys are instant veterans to stick in the front court. You could easily use the room exception on them. I don't think either one would be looking for more than like a 2-year deal. Maybe $3 to $4 million per year would get it done. As long as they're willing to come to a rebuilding team like Phoenix and they have the connection to our front office in the past. So if the Suns miraculously swing a Brogdon deal, I would almost say expect Dante Cunningham or Jonas Jerebko to be the backup power forward. Like mark it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in a scenario where we keep Kelly Oubre and get either Malcolm Brogdon or D'Angelo Russell, because those scenarios are so complicated that we would be well over the cap if that were to happen. And if that were to happen, we're well over the cap. One of the only options we have is that exception. And you would need a guy that fits that 4.7-ish million or whatever it comes out to be. And those are examples that would actually do that. So I do agree with that. Do you have any thoughts? Mirotic becomes a little less important with Dario Saric, right? I feel like they're kind of an overlapping skill set. Tobias Harris is another player. It just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Tobias seems to have a lot of options there on the East, and I have a feeling he's going to stay there, especially if the 76ers strike out in Jimmy Butler, which seems like a possibility at this point with the rumors of Houston trying to make a run at him, which I don't fully understand, but Houston's pulled off some miraculous things in the past, so we'll see. Mike Scott, JaMychal Green, Julius Randle. We didn't even talk about Julius Randle.
Yeah, I think neither of us wants Julius Randle. Noah Vonleh is still on my list. He's kind of like budget Thad Young, like $6 to $8 million version of Thad Young. Doesn't have the
Thad
same.
Younger.
Thad.
We nicknamed him.
That's great. I really like that a lot.
Thad Younger.
Yeah, and he's Thad Younger. That's all I have to say about that. He's Thad Younger.
I think that's all we got. I think this is enough. We're at 88 minutes here. This is actually shorter than what was our second or third podcast that we ever did, which was an hour and 40 minutes about free agency. Honestly, I could talk about so many more players, and I think it was actually really difficult to come up with the top 5. I'm glad that ours were different. I assumed there would be some overlap. There are guys in my honorable mentions that I would not be mad at, that I would still be happy with, and I think this team actually does have some good opportunities. Going through this exercise, I realized this team does have some opportunities to improve pretty drastically, even without guys like Malcolm Brogdon and D'Angelo Russell in free agency. Do you agree?
Yeah, they definitely do. I mean, couple that with internal development from our young players, and the Suns should be a better team next year for sure. I guess just whether or not they get one of the big fish is really going to affect our ceiling going forward. That's what we're going to talk about a lot over the next couple weeks.
I completely agree, and if we end up being terrible next season, we can clip this out and put it in our hot takes, our cold takes segment in the future. That's all I got. You got anything else?
Nope, that's all. Thanks for listening, guys. This was a long one.
Yes, thank you everyone who stuck around to the end. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, rate and review us, do all those fun things.
I don't really care about D'Angelo Russell. Or
so we don't think the youngin likes you? We don't think was he trying to throw hate so you can try and slide in?
You know what I will say? I don't know if it was this, but I do think they all kind of joke around on each other. And I don't know about secretly filming each other, but they do kind of like to catch each other doing dumb stuff. But usually it's just like taking a dump. Taking a dump.
I have PenFed, that's a fact.
I have PenFed, that's a fact.
My credit card purchases get me cash back.
My credit card purchases get me cash back.
No one else gets these rewards.
Sergeant, that is just plain untrue.
What in tarnation?
Sir, PenFed's Paracash Rewards Card isn't just for military members. Anyone can get cash back on all purchases.
Ah, Figgins, you've ruined my favorite song.
PenFed Credit Union. Visit PenFed.org/PowerCash. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.